This is Principles of Company Law, taught for the CUHK JD program, and my name is David Donald. This introductory lecture will tell you something about the nature of the company, the nature of company law, and also this course, how it'll be arranged, and how you'll be assessed. Let me introduce myself. I am a professor in the Faculty of Law. I have taught in the Faculty of Law since 2008. Before that, I was in Germany, and I worked as a lawyer in Washington, D.C. I'm American, in Italy, and in Germany. And I've studied company law in those countries and write on comparative company law as well as Hong Kong, American, and German company law. This course is a general survey course, but it will allow you to learn how to actually apply the law. And so you'll see that the general principles that you need to learn are not difficult, but the application of the law can be very tricky. And that's why we'll focus extensively on application in class, and as I'll explain later, that's why these lectures are being recorded and given to you to listen to outside of class. So let's look at some of the nuts and bolts of the overall structure of company law. The course will be designed not to give you this sort of an experience. I know that you are studying hard. Using a lot of energy in class is difficult, especially when you have a full day. But the way that we can provide information today indicates that me standing in a room in front of you and giving you information is really not the best use of our time. And I probably could think up some entertaining jokes for you from stories, so you wouldn't have to use a lot of energy in the lecture. But that's not what we're going to do. What we'll be doing is rather applying what we know about education, that when you simply listen to someone present something or read it for the first time, you generally might retain about 10% of that 13 weeks later. However, if you apply and analyze what you're applying and work with a creative energy to devise solutions when you're applying what you've learned, then you tend to retain about 90%. And so given that you're paying for this program, I think that we should use our time together in these 13 weeks to give you something so you can take away 90% retention rather than 10% retention that then you bring up to speed during the time after the course on your own privately in studying for the exam. So we'll be analyzing the law as it applies to facts in our time together in class. We'll be creating solutions to practical problems that I give you, and then evaluating various possible solutions to the practical problems. And that should, as overall generalized testing in educational programs show, give you an extremely high retention rate for the material. And I do apologize that the class time will not be as relaxing, but I suppose the most relaxing thing would be not to study law at all. And so I want to try to give you as much for the program that you're paying to receive as I can. So companies might not be why you decided to study law, and let me explain how they're relevant to you. You have logos all around you. You have services all around you. In Hong Kong, we have about 1 million companies registered. That's in a population of about 7 million people. So one company per 7 people is a lot of companies. You can see how these logos and other logos that you know represent services and products that you consume. And nearly every service you consume, every product you purchase, will be provided by a company. So companies are the standard vehicle through which nearly all commercial activity and also a lot of social activity, that is working for social change, will be conducted. When you look at a company, and let's take Hutchinson. Hutchinson is one of the oldest companies in Hong Kong. When you look at the company Hutchinson, and that's also the building that's attached to this Bank of America building, it might not mean a lot to you. Now let's look at some companies that Hutchinson owns. It owns Park and Shop. It owns 3. It owns this juice label in Hong Kong, Mr. Juicy. Watson's, which actually preceded Hutchinson. Watson's goes back to about 1831 in Guangzhou. And Fortress, which sells electronics and other appliances. And we see Mr. Li Ka-shing, who is the founder of the modern Hutchinson, and he has driven it to the size by which it then can offer you a company that you can buy all of your food from, another from which you can buy all your cosmetics, another from which you can buy all of your electronics, including your phone, and a phone company then that can provide you with broadband, mobile, and telephone service. So you could live pretty much your whole life in Hong Kong having to do with really no other company but Hutchinson, perhaps the MTR. And when we think about this, we might think, okay, behind all this is Li Ka-shing. But actually behind this is a legal entity which allows Li Ka-shing, he's now retired, Li Ka-shing, to accomplish what he did in Hong Kong. And the company limited by shares has 5 basic characteristics. And these characteristics will be found in the company limited by shares or the stock corporation in every country of the world. A company is a person, and so it has legal personality. And because the company itself is a person, it has its own rights and duties. It has its own debts and credits. And so because the company has its debts, the person that owns the company does not have those very same debts, and we refer to that as limited liability, which essentially means that someone else, aside from the owner of the company, is liable, and that someone else is the company, which is a legal person. So you own a company, and that company is a person, and that person, because it has its own debts, will limit your liability to what you put in the company as your investment. Your investment will be evidenced by a share of stock, and that share is generally transferable, although we'll talk a bit in the next meeting about private and public companies and limitations on transfer. But generally speaking, a share of stock, which is a negotiable instrument, is designed to be transferred. So when you contribute money to the company in order to allow it to have some funds, the company then gives you a share, or more than one share, to evidence your ownership in that company as you have brought the company into existence and given it the funds that it needs to operate. When you act as a manager in that company, you take on a new capacity, which will be a director in most cases, although not all managers in larger companies are directors. And so you have done two capacities in the company, one as member or shareholder, and the other as director. The directors are governed by a set of rules in the company's ordinance which allow for regulated central management of the company. And so that's pretty much the entire body of the company law that we'll be studying. The law creates a person, and that's the company. That person has limited liability because it's a different person from the physical person that owns it. The ownership of the company is evidenced by shares, and the issue of those shares, the rights of those shares, the sale of those shares will be governed by the company law and to a certain extent by commercial law. And then when directors are appointed to the company to have control over the company, their behavior will also be governed by the company law.